Hello everyone, this is part 34 of What If Naruto Was Trained by Anko, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. The day seemed to take forever for Tenten. Morning practice had been painfully slow, and even when Naruto proposed to have a Kenjutsu sparring match, time seemed to go too slow. The afternoon training with Guy and Neji was even worse. With Lee still not able to train and practice, Guy focused his attention to her, and his speeches of youth and its power was starting to get on her nerves. When Lee was there, he distracted Guy enough to reduce it to acceptable levels, and she was able to ignore it for the most part. Neji wasn't any help either, as he was always busy practicing on his own. Guy couldn't train him in the Yukan, so he let Neji do as he pleased as long as he trained his power of youth. Tenten was amazed at the change Neji had undergone since his match with Hinata during the finals of the Chunin exams. Before, he was always fate this and fate that whenever he talked. Now, however, he seemed too much more relaxed, and he even freely talked with Hinata, something he clearly wouldn't have done before. He had even complimented her on their match once he had recovered enough from the shock. It seemed that he had made peace with the main branch of the Hyuga clan, or at least with Hinata. Alright, my two youthful companions, that's it for today. Guy finally said, ending the training. We shall continue to train our youthful body tomorrow. He then gave his customary thumbs up and a pearly white-teethed smile. Luckily wasn't there, so Tenten and Neji were safe from the unbeatable genjutsu that normally appeared. Tenten rushed to get her things and sped off to find Team 8, and in particular Naruto. She had waited all day to go see the old man who might teach her how to create and forge her own weapons, so she was excited to the core of her being. She ran in the direction of Team 8's training ground, jumping across rooftops so she wouldn't have to dodge people on the road. She made in record time and found Naruto waiting for her. "Ah, there you are, Tenten. I've been waiting for you." Naruto smiled. "I'm sorry, Naruto, but Guy-sensei kept us training until 5 minutes ago." Tenten apologized quickly. "Don't worry about. I got to work on my special project a bit, so no harm done." Naruto waved away her apology. "So are you ready to go?" Tenten didn't need to be told twice, so she eagerly nodded and followed Naruto towards the southern part of Konoha. They could have hurried to get there, but Naruto didn't seem to be in a hurry, and she didn't want to pressure him. She was glad he wanted to accompany her because she didn't know anything about the man. Though Naruto said that he only met the man once, and only for a short period of time, it was better than nothing. The house was easy enough to find, just like Hideki had said it would be. It was the only house that was separated from all the others, and it was pretty big too. Naruto and Tenten stopped by the large wooden gate and went up to the front door. The house was surrounded by a beautiful garden that had a large pond with several koi fish swimming in it. They had to cross a small bridge over the pond to reach the door. When they knocked, they heard a distant voice, and about half a minute later the door opened. The old man seemed to have forgotten who Naruto, and he was pretty sure he had never met the girl before. "Musashi-san, do you remember me? My name is Namikaze Naruto, and we met in Hideki-san's shop a few months ago." Naruto greeted the man. "Ah yes, Naruto-san, you're the one who forged that sword with some of my leftover material. What brings you to my home?" Musashi remembered. "Musashi-san, I would like you to meet one of my friends. Her name is Tenten, and she's an aspiring weapon mistress." Naruto introduced Tenten. "It's a pleasure meeting you, Musashi-san." Tenten bowed deeply. She had a faint feeling that this man was a lot more than he let out to be. "Likewise, Tenten-san, now what can this old man do for you two youngsters?" Musashi asked them. "Musashi-san, may I ask you a question before we answer yours?" Tenten politely asked him. She got a nod from the old man and continued talking. "Ayumiyamoto Musashi-sensei. One of the world's most famous and best weapon forger known throughout the shinobi nations. I would never have thought that one as young as you would know of my accomplishments, but yet that's me." Musashi chuckled softly. Naruto stayed silent, not knowing what exactly was going on, but he could see that Tenten was shocked, and she seemed to have shut down entirely. He shook her a little bit so she would snap out of it and laughed when she jumped from surprise. He knew that the old man was a famous weapon maker, but he hadn't thought that he was that famous. To have received praise like he did from that man was something that made him incredibly proud. Now, how about you two answer my question? Musashi asked them. Musashi-sama, I humbly request to be taken on as your apprentice. Tenten said, falling on her knees and bowing deeply. My dear girl, I haven't taken on any apprentice for decades. The old man said, why would I accept you as my apprentice? He saw Naruto was going to say something, but he shook his head. The old man clearly wanted Tenten to defend her case on her own. For as long as I can remember, my dream has been to become Konoha's best weapons mistress. Tenten said while raising her head looking straight at the man. I have dedicated my life to make that dream come true, and it means the world to me. When I heard that Naruto had forged his own weapons, I was astonished that he could achieve something like that. I love weapons, but I've never thought about forging my own until that moment. She said before catching her breath. I asked him to teach me, but he refused, saying that he isn't capable enough to teach me to become a true weapon maker. When we asked Hideki-san, he refused as well, saying that he didn't have the time to teach me properly, but he told us about you. Please sir, I want to learn from the best, I want to be able to keep that tradition alive. Musashi had listened very carefully to Tenten's words, and he could see that she was serious about learning under him. She seemed to have a love for weapons just like he did in his younger years. To people like him and Tenten, weapons were not only a tool to be used as a shinobi. They were extensions of their own body, and they were cared for like they were alive. He decided to have one last question before making his decision. Very impressive, Tenten-san. Could you show me one of your kunai, please? Musashi asked her. Tenten nodded and handed one of her standard kunai from her weapon pouch. Musashi eyed the kunai and was impressed that it was so well cared for. He could see that the kunai was frequently used, but there was no imperfection to the blade. It was perfectly sharpened and cared for just like a kunai should be. Inwardly he smiled, thinking that Tenten would make a fine apprentice, and maybe she would be able to carry on his family trade after he had passed away. He would have to teach her as much as possible in the few years he still had left, but he was sure someone like Tenten would be able to succeed where others had failed. Naruto-san, would you please leave Tenten and me some time to talk? I'd like to ask her some questions in private before making my decision. Musashi said, addressing Naruto. Of course, Musashi-sama. Thank you for everything you have done for me, and thank you for giving Tenten a chance. Naruto bowed deeply. Tenten, I'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you, Naruto. I'll see you tomorrow, and tell Anko-sensei hello for me. Tenten said thankfully. The next morning, Naruto and Anko were discussing if they would stay at the apartment or at his parents' house that weekend. Naruto wanted to spend the weekend there, but Anko was a bit more reserved about it. She did want to live there eventually, but she thought that it might be a little too soon for Naruto. She remembered how he had broken down in his parents' bedroom after all. But when Naruto reassured her that he was up to it, she agreed to give it a try. Along the way, the rest of the team had met up, and all of them were talking to each other about things that happened at home or during training. Kiba was telling Shino about how he had trained with his sister Hana the day before and how he had almost succeeded in using his new jutsu. He failed to mention that Hana had kicked his ass during the spar though. Hinata was talking to Kurenai about how she and her little sister had become somewhat friends again, and how glad she was for the change in their relationship. When they reached the training ground, however, something strange happened. Out of nowhere, Naruto got ambushed and he felt someone crashing into him, making him fall to the ground. The next thing he knew was hearing someone say, "Thank you," over and over again. He opened his eyes and saw Tenten looking down at him. She just grabbed him in a fierce hug and thanked him again. The others were looking at the scene with amazement before all of them turned to Anko. They knew that Anko wasn't worried about Naruto cheating on her or something like that, but no one liked having their lover hugged by another woman. They couldn't read the look on her face, so they all took a step backwards, not wanting to receive any part of Anko's wrath. Tenten was unaware that Anko was approaching her, as she was still too busy thanking the blonde. Naruto, however, was trying to escape from her hug, but she had a firm hold of him, and no matter how much he tried, he couldn't get free. He froze when he saw Anko leaning close to Tenten and hoped that she wouldn't do anything rash. Sorry to interrupt you, Tenten-san. Anko said with a creepy voice. But I would like it very much if you could stop molesting my boyfriend. Tenten felt someone lean close to her, and when she heard Anko's words she seemed to realize what she had been doing. She quickly pushed herself away from Naruto and turned to Anko. Ah, Anko-sensei, I'm sorry. She quickly tried to apologize. I didn't mean anything with it. Really, it certainly seemed that you meant something with it, Anko said with a straight face, looking very mad. You looked like you were enjoying yourself. And no, it's just that I wanted to thank Naruto-kun for introducing me to Musashi-sensei. Tenten stammered. Oh, so it's Naruto-kun now, is it? Anko said, taking a step closer to Tenten. What? Oh no, I'm not interested in Naruto that way. Please Anko-sensei, you have to believe me. Tenten pleaded. Do you mean to say that he isn't good enough for you? Is that it? Anko asked her, taking another step forward. Tenten was about to start apologizing again, but then Naruto put a hand on Anko's shoulder. That's enough, Anko-chan. I think you teased and scared Tenten enough for one day, don't you think? Naruto said with a small grin on his face. Fine, but you owe me one. I was having a great time teasing her. Anko sighed before winking at Tenten. Wait a minute, you mean you were just messing with me? Tenten asked, secretly glad that Anko wasn't serious. Anko laughed loudly before grabbing Tenten in a headlock and started to rub her head with her fist. She then reassured the girl that she didn't mean anything bad with her teasing, but that it was just a too great opportunity to tease her a bit. Tenten managed to get away from Anko and glared at the woman before joining in on the laughter with the rest of them. She had to admit that she fell completely for the prank and she wasn't really mad about it. She could see how funny it must have been for Anko to scare her like that. She vowed to Anko that she would get even one day and that she would regret messing with her like that. I accept your challenge, Tenten, but I'm not too worried about it. Anko shrugged with a smile. So Tenten, guessing from your excitement and the smile on your face, it's safe to say that you got accepted as Musashi-san's apprentice? Naruto asked Tenten. The girl just nodded and told them how she had talked for hours with the old man about weapons, her hobbies, her dreams and her goals in life. She told them that he was very impressed with her and that in the end he had told her that her training would begin the next day. This brought a round of congratulations from Naruto and the rest that made Tenten beam with pride. The other Genin and Junin senseis had joined as well and congratulated her on becoming an apprentice of such an amazing person. When they had congratulated Tenten, they started morning training and things went their usual way. In the hospital, people were getting ready for an operation on Lee. Today Tsunade would try to heal his leg injury. It wasn't a really complicated surgery, so he wasn't too worried about it. Still, he was glad that Guy Sensei had been kind enough to accompany him to the hospital. He also told him that he would be there when he would wake up afterwards. What Guy hadn't told Lee was that the whole gang would be there as well to show Lee that they had faith in him. They wanted to let him know that he wasn't alone and that he had many friends who were waiting for him. When his leg had healed enough, Tsunade would attempt to remove the pieces of bone that were lodged inside his spine. She would have to perform several operations to succeed in removing every piece, and she would have to be very careful as well. She had told him about the risks, but Lee was determined to face the odds. It would take some time to heal if the operations worked, but he was sure that he would make it through. He refused to give up like that. Are you ready, Lee-san? Shizune asked softly. She was Tsunade's assistant, so she was asked to prepare Lee for the surgery. I'm ready, Shizune-san, Lee said with confidence. Guy-sensei, I'll see you in a few hours. Guy watched as Lee was rolled out the room and sighed. He truly hoped that Lee would be able to continue his shinobi career. He knew how much that meant to the young boy and that he would be devastated if he had to quit. Guy had taken to the young boy ever since he saw him practicing like crazy just to catch up with his classmates in the academy. So when he had been chosen to become the boy's Junin sensei, Guy had promised that he would do everything in his power to make Lee one of the best taijutsu user in Konoha. Lee had surpassed his wildest imaginations when it came to learning taijutsu, and Guy truly believed that one day Lee would surpass him. He had the fullest confidence in Tsunade's capabilities, but still he was worried a bit. It was a good 3 hours later when Lee was returned to his room still asleep from the anesthetics. Guy immediately went to his side and sat down in the chair next to him. Tsunade entered the room and smiled at Guy. She was glad to see that someone would be there for Lee when he would wake up. She motioned for Guy to join her in the hallway so she could explain how the operation went. Guy nodded and silently followed her. Tsunade-sama, how did it go? Guy asked, a little worried. You can relax, Guy-san, everything went perfectly. Tsunade assured him. He should wake up in a couple hours, but the pain should be minimal. His leg will remain in a cast for a week or two, and then we can begin with small exercises so he can regain his mobility. Thank you so much, Tsunade-sama. Guy said with a smile. Don't mention it. I'm glad everything went all right. I'll let you tell him the good news, but remember, no training whatsoever until I give permission. Tsunade sternly said. Guy nodded and promised to tell Lee the exact same message when he woke up. Guy then left the hospital to inform the rest of the genin that the operation had gone well. Since Lee wouldn't wake up for a few hours, he didn't have to hurry, but he didn't want to lose time neither. He was glad that the operation had been during the morning, so he knew they would still be at the training grounds. When he arrived, he immediately called for them to gather so he could tell them the good news. It didn't have to be said that all of them were very glad for their friend, and like they promised Guy the day before, they would come and see him later on in the afternoon when Lee had recovered a bit. Lee woke up feeling a bit disoriented, but he knew that was because of the anesthetic, so he didn't worry. He felt a bit of pain in his leg, but it was manageable compared to the pain he used to have just after he fought Gaara. He looked at his leg and saw that it was wrapped in a white cast going from his foot to above his knee. He frowned at it but knew that it couldn't be helped. His leg needed to rest and heal before he could start training again. Of course, he wouldn't be able to train if the injury in his back wasn't healed first, but he swore to himself that he wouldn't give up until Tsunade had operated on his back. Hearing a sound coming from his right side, Lee turned his head and saw Guy snoring in the seat next to his bed. Lee couldn't help but be glad to have such a wonderful teacher at his side. Lee used his arm to shake the man a little, hoping that he would wake up. Guy, who contrary to his somewhat flashy appearance was an excellent shinobi, didn't need much prodding to wake up and sprung out of the chair in case that he was attacked. Seeing that he was safe, Guy turned to his left and saw Lee smiling at him. Lee, how are you feeling? Are you in pain? Do you need anything? Guy asked, concerned. I'm fine, Guy-sensei, though I could drink some water, please. Lee admitted. Guy nodded and filled a glass with water before handing it to Lee, who drank it in one go. I've got some good news for you from Tsunade-sama. Guy smiled at Lee. The operation went perfectly. Your leg should be as good as new once it's healed. Really? That's great news, Lee said, relieved at hearing the good news. Just then they heard a knock on the door, making Guy open it. To Lee's surprise, all his friends entered the room. The girls entered first, carrying a huge fruit basket with all different fruits. The guys followed close by, and one by one they greeted him and shook his hand. The girls even gave him a kiss on the cheek, making Lee blush like crazy. Guy was proclaiming Lee's youthfulness at finding so many girlfriends. This made Lee blush even more and yell out that Guy was wrong and that he didn't have any girlfriends. The rest of the people there were glad to see that Lee was doing fine and sniggered at both of them. The genin told Lee what they had been doing and learning from their senseis and said that they waited for him to join them, so the entire group was complete. Lee promised to do his best to heal so he could start training again. Here Guy told him that he was forbidden to train in any way until Tsunade gave him permission. Lee looked a bit down at hearing that but promised not to train. The other cheered him up by saying that he was plenty strong and fast enough. They would use this time to try and catch up with him. After talking for about an hour, the group saw that Lee had trouble staying awake, so they bid him a speedy recovery and returned home. While all this was going on in the hospital, Iruka was having a meeting with Tsunade in the Hokage's office. He had been summoned earlier that afternoon, much to his surprise, as he was teaching today. The Anbu that had come to relay the message had said that Iruka was to dismiss the students for the day and that his presence was needed urgently. After he told the students that they were free for the rest of the day, he followed the Anbu to the Hokage tower. To say that Iruka was somewhat nervous to meet with the new Hokage was like saying that Naruto liked ramen. In other words, an obvious fact. He had a good understanding with the Sandaime Hokage ever since the man had helped him deal with his parents' death all those years ago. He would be eternally grateful to the man for his kind words and help. Naruto was another reason why he considered the man some of the greatest person ever lived. The Sandaime had always supported Naruto, and Iruka knew that Naruto considered the man family. Tsunade, however, was someone Iruka didn't know at all. Sure, he knew what everyone knew about the Sannin, but almost no one knew the Sannin personally. He knew of her history with the village, and he had been told by Naruto how they had met and how he convinced her to become the god Hokage, but that was about all he knew about the woman. Naruto seemed to like her, so to him that meant that she couldn't be all that bad. He entered the room and bowed to Tsunade before he stepped forward to her desk. You called for me, Hokage-sama? Iruka asked. You must be Iruka-san, please take a seat. Tsunade pointed at the seat. I called you here today to discuss some of the changes that will happen at the academy. Pardon my ignorance, Hokage-sama, but what are these changes you're talking about? Iruka asked, surprised. There hadn't been any changes in several years, and he personally thought the system they had now worked pretty well. Of course, you haven't been briefed on that, haven't you? Tsunade then proceeded to tell Iruka about the changes they would be making. Iruka listened very closely and had to admit that it sounded very good in theory. He was a bit worried about the practical side of the project though. When he voiced his concerns, Tsunade smiled at him. You see, Iruka, that's exactly why I called you here. I've heard nothing but good things about your abilities as a teacher and as a person, so I believe you're the perfect man for the job. Tsunade said, giving him a thin envelope. When Iruka opened it and read through the contents of the letter inside, he almost fainted. You want me to become the head of the academy and lead the program? Iruka said, astonished. Do you accept this assignment, Iruka-san? Tsunade asked him. I've been assured that you were the ideal person. May I ask who recommended me for the job, Hokage-sama? Iruka wanted to know. There were a lot of people who vouched for you, but I guess the most important ones were Namikaze Naruto and the Sandaime Hokage. Tsunade said with a smile. Naruto told me that you were the only teacher at the academy that treated him with care and that he considered you like an older brother. The Sandaime praised your teaching skills and said that you were a professional who gives his all in everything he does. That told me everything I needed to know about you. Iruka felt very proud and happy hearing that Naruto and the Sandaime held him in such high regard. He was glad to hear that Naruto considered him as an older brother, seeing as he always considered the blonde shinobi as family. That the Sandaime had praised him like that came as a surprise, but a very pleasant one at that. Now that he heard this, there was no way he could refuse the position Tsunade-sama offered him. If he did that, he felt that he would disappoint him too much. Hokage-sama, if you think that I'm the best man for the job, then I have no choice than accept it. I'll do my very best to ensure that this project works to perfection. Iruka said with conviction, making Tsunade smile. Excellent, I'll announce your appointment as head of the academy tonight in a meeting with everyone who works at the academy. Tsunade clapped her hands together before she started to explain just what his new job would entail and what was expected of him. For 2 hours Iruka listened and gave his opinion where needed. When they finally finished their talk, it was nearly time for the meeting with the rest of the academy workers, so they left straight for the meeting room. Tsunade knew she would be in for a long meeting and sighed, hoping that this was the last meeting for the week. Little did she know that Shizune and Sarutobi had scheduled more than enough work to keep her occupied for the rest of the week. After moving into his parents' house for the weekend, Naruto was working through the assignments Jiraiya had given him. To Anko's surprise, Naruto immediately commandeered his father's office and installed himself in it. He ensured her that he felt okay with it, so she didn't bother him about it. Naruto had been given several scrolls with things he needed to learn by the time Jiraiya returned to the village. He received a scroll for ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu and fuinjutsu, each filled with numerous assignments and objectives he needed to complete. Today he was working on fuinjutsu and in particular on creating explosive tags. Naruto needed to create his own tags by figuring out how to make them by using the theory Jiraiya provided. Contrary to what people thought, creating such tags wasn't simple. It was more than just drawing a seal on a piece of paper. When one created a tag, they had to calculate the necessary size of the seal according to the power you wanted the seal to have. If you used a seal that wasn't perfectly drawn, you could have a small disaster at hand. It could explode too soon or too late, the explosion could be too big, not big enough, or it could fail to explode to begin with. That's why Naruto was busy filling paper after paper with calculations to find the exact seal he wanted. It wasn't something he liked, but he had already come up with another type of seal during this, so he didn't exactly hate it as well. When he finished his math work, he went outside and started drawing the seal on a small piece of paper. He then created a cage bunchen and ordered it to apply the tag to training log that could be found at the far end of his property. The clone nodded and Naruto prepared himself just in case he had miscalculated or something. That was the reason he used a cage bunchen to do it. Until he was sure it worked exactly as he wanted it to work, he wouldn't use it in any way. Seeing that the clone had put the seal on the log, he raised his arm and gave the clone the sign to proceed. The clone turned back to the tag and forced some chakra into the seal. The seal burned for about 2 seconds before it exploded. The explosion, however, was way bigger than Naruto had wanted it to be, so even at the distance he could feel the heat and the burst of air from the explosion. It was so big that he had to shield his ears from the sound so that he wouldn't be temporarily deafened. Opening his eyes, he saw the destruction and couldn't help but whistle. The training log had been incinerated and a large crater was all that was left from the ground. Naruto was feeling very glad that he used a cage bunchen instead of going himself. Anko was doing some reading of her own in the living room, enjoying herself, when a large explosion came from the garden. She knew that Naruto was working on explosive tags, so she wasn't surprised to hear something being blown up. She didn't expect such a large explosion, however, and she became worried that something might have happened to her boyfriend. She hurried outside and saw Naruto safe and sound standing there looking at the result of his experiment. She went over to him to give him a good scolding at scaring her like that. He could at least have told her that he was going to try out one of his tags. Naruto, what the hell was that? Anko yelled at him. You scared me half to death with that explosion. Oh hey Anko-chan, I'm sorry for scaring you like that. Naruto said, a bit sheepish. It seems that I miscalculated somewhere. I meant to make it powerful enough to destroy the training log, but something went wrong. Are you okay? Did you get hurt? Anko asked him, inspecting him for injuries. I'm fine, I used a clone to detonate it. Naruto grinned. Good thinking there, so what exactly went wrong? Anko asked. I have no idea, I thought my calculations were correct. Naruto sighed. Well, back to the drawing board it is. Don't worry Naruto-kun, you'll get it right eventually. Anko encouraged him. The rest few hours were spent with recalculating his seals and testing a few other tags. At the end of the evening, when Anko finally had enough of hearing explosion after explosion, Naruto was forced to stop working on his tags. Nevertheless, he had made some great progress and he was certain that he would fine-tune his tags in the coming days. They spent the rest of the evening talking and enjoying each other's company. When they finally went to bed, Naruto had some trouble sleeping in his parents' bed, but when Anko held him close, he slowly drifted away. The next few weeks went very fast for Naruto and the gang. Between training and doing some missions here and there, time seemed to fly for the young genins. They all had made some serious progress and most of them were very proud of themselves. The ones who made the most progress were without a doubt Hinata, Sakura and Ino, thanks to their training as a medic nin. The girls had surprised both Tsunade and Shizune with their talent, and the three of them would be starting their hospital duty in about a month according to Shizune. That didn't mean the rest of the genin weren't getting stronger as well. Proof of that was visible when you looked at Chuji. He had always been someone who lacked a bit of confidence in his own skills and body, but now he was comfortable with whom he was. Thanks to the Sandaim's words after the invasion, he had found his place in his team and he worked very hard to become strong. He trained with his dad in his family ninjutsu and he was becoming a opponent to beat. Chuji had large amount of chakra at his disposition and he wasn't afraid to use it during battle. He and Shikamaru had also been working on joint battle tactics and they had come up with some frightening combinations. Chuji would force his opponent towards Shikamaru's shadow, making it easier for Shikamaru to catch him off guard, and once he had them in his trap, Chuji would deliver the finishing blow. It had proved to be a very useful way to deal with enemies. They had even considered Ino's ability to invade their enemy's mind, so they were a team with excellent teamwork. Neji was also someone who had made a lot of progress thanks to the training he received. But more importantly, he seemed to be a lot more open towards other people and wasn't the same jerk he was before his defeat at Hinata's hands. Though officially the match was a draw, to Neji he had lost completely. Hinata had shown him that one can defy destiny and fate. It had changed everything in his eyes. He was very impressed with the way Hinata had fought, and he too was starting to create his own style of the Yuken. It wasn't anything like Hinata's, but rather he reformed the original Yukan Taijutsu into something that he felt comfortable with. He still had a lot of work ahead of him, but that didn't bother him in the least. On the contrary, it proved to be a very good way for him to relax and meditate. All in all, they were very happy with how things were going for them. They learned tons of new stuff and they got stronger each day, so nobody had a reason to complain. Although there had been a small incident when it became known that Naruto had been officially accepted as Jiraiya's apprentice. Until then, the only ones who knew about it were Team 8, Anko, Kurenai, Sandaime, Shizune and Tsunade. When Tsunade informed the council, word had spread around Konoha, and it didn't take long until Sasuke heard the news. Flashback. Sasuke was returning home after training at his favorite training spot. He was fairly content at the way he had been progressing thanks to all the training he did. At first he had been skeptic about the whole team training thing, but it proved to be worth it. He had learned several new jutsu like Shunshin no Jutsu, and even the jutsu Naruto had made. He had to admit that it was a powerful jutsu that might come in handy one day. He had gotten over the fact that he couldn't use his Sharingan during the morning training even if it had taken a while. The only thing he couldn't get rid of was his feelings for Naruto. Everything the blonde did pissed him off to a certain degree. He just couldn't understand how someone like Naruto, who was the last in the academy, had become so strong. Even when Kakashi explained to him that Naruto trained just as much or maybe even more than he did, Sasuke resented the blonde for being stronger. At first he had thought that he would catch up pretty fast, but just as Sasuke progressed, Naruto seemed to progress even faster. It was infuriating to say the least. While turning the corner, he saw some of Konoha's biggest gossipers standing a few feet away. He snorted at them. He knew two of them were former shinobi and they were known throughout Konoha for always knowing the latest news. He got closer to them, not really caring who or what they were talking about, until he heard the name Namikaze Naruto fall. Deciding that maybe they knew something that could help him beat the blonde, he approached them and listened to them. When he heard one say that Naruto had been accepted as Jiraiya's apprentice, he almost lost it. He hurried home, not wanting to cause a scene in the middle of the street. When he entered his house, he let out a loud scream of frustration and envy. To be accepted as an apprentice to someone as legendary as Jiraiya of the Sannin wasn't something to take lightly. Sasuke just couldn't understand what made Naruto so special that he got this honor. After thinking for a while, he figured that it was because Naruto was the son of the Yondaime Hokage, who had been taught by Jiraiya as a genin. It was, however, the next day that things got messy. The others too had heard the news and confronted Naruto about it. Naruto confirmed the news, saying that he indeed had been accepted as Jiraiya's apprentice. He also told them that he had been training with Jiraiya for a while now. Of course, this forced Naruto to explain how exactly he had met Jiraiya and what exactly he had learned from the Sannin. After he finished telling them his first encounter with Jiraiya, most of the genin were laughing at the L's misfortune to spy on Kunoiki. Well, the guys laughed, the girls were rather mad that a Sannin would spy on women in the hot spring. So basically he agreed to teach you because you're the son of his former pupil. Sasuke said dryly. Perhaps that was one of the reasons, but I'm sure that's not the only reason. Naruto agreed. If that was the only reason, he could have taught me one thing and leave again. Instead, he saw that I was someone worth training, and that's why he took me as his apprentice. So you're saying that you're the only one here who's worth being taught? Sasuke said, angry. I did not say anything of the sort, Sasuke, and I'd like it if you didn't put words in my mouth. Naruto disagreed strongly. There isn't anyone here who isn't worth teaching, and I would never think that of any of you. You are all my friends, and I believe in all of you just like Sandaime Jichin and Tsunade Barkan do. Besides, I'm not the only one who's taught by a Sannin. Hinata, Sakura and Ino are learning to become medic nin, so there will be a day when Tsunade Barkan teaches them personally. Don't think that you're better than me just because of who your father was, Dobe. Sasuke stepped forward, trying to intimidate Naruto. He may have been Hokage, but he was nothing compared to an Uchiha. It took almost everything Naruto had not to knock Sasuke's lights out, but he managed to resist the urge. He knew about Sasuke's jealousy and he could deal with it until a certain degree, but if he started to insult his parents, it would mean the gloves came off. Lucky for Sasuke, the Junin sensei had heard the commotion and had intervened. Anko took Naruto to a side so she could calm him down a bit, she was glad and very proud that he managed to stay calm like that. Minato was, on top of being his father, Naruto's idol and the person he wanted to surpass more than anyone. For Sasuke to insult his father like that must have angered him a lot. Kakashi on the other hand was lecturing Sasuke about insulting people like that. He told Sasuke that he was very disappointed in his behavior and that if it happened again he would take action. Sasuke just ignored him until Kakashi threatened to remove him from the program. Sasuke didn't like that idea very much and nodded that he understood. He did refuse to apologize to Naruto however, and Kakashi let it go, seeing that this was the best he could get from the boy. End flashback. It took several days before the tension between Naruto and Sasuke disappeared, but eventually they just continued like before. Naruto pretty much ignored Sasuke for a few days, but after that he tried his best to befriend the lone Uchiha. But like always, Sasuke refused to open up to the rest of the genin outside of training and missions. The Junin sensei had already accepted the fact that Sasuke didn't seem to be in a hurry to socialize with the group, but as long as he worked together with them there wasn't anything they could do about it. They consoled themselves in the fact that the rest of the genin were very close group of friends. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.